Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. This is your host, John Espinosa. As always, click on that subscribe button. It helps us get this message out to as many people as we possibly can, and it helps us get others to where they're going. I am super excited today because it is interview day, and I have Holly Thompson joining me today. Hey, Holly, say hello
Hey,
to
John.
everybody.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me today.
You're very welcome. And, one of the things as we highlight Women's History Month, I wanted to have influential female leaders that, have walked the walk and have influenced me even over my frontline leadership journey. So today, Holly's on with us. I'm going to briefly give a little bio around Holly, and then we'll get right into the interview. So here we go. Holly is a career or has a career that spans more than 15 years of civil service in a couple separate organizations, and she's held a variety of leadership positions. When I first met Holly, it was in a previous organization, and we were on a strategic planning, kind of the executive director's senior advisor team, and I was at that time strategic planner. And Holly came in as our business analytics officer from another organization, and she fit right in with the team. It was pretty much day one, we began to work with another one of our colleagues, and it was just a really, really great journey. So when I thought about people who I would have liked, or I would like to showcase on the podcast this month, Holly was one of those names at the very, very top of my list. So I am super excited to have her on. Holly is also an agricultural enthusiast. So she has, I don't know how many head of cattle, I'll let her tell you. But if you follow her on Facebook, you'll get to see her cattle. She's in real estate. She volunteers for some youth programs, sports programs in her community that she lives in. She's built her life around professional and personal service. And most importantly, she's been married 15 years and is mother to two beautiful children. So, Holly, welcome today. Thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I'm really excited to be here. And yes, I do have, I think, 10 head of cattle at this point. Those are Highlands, everyone's favorite type of cow. Mine are not as snuggly as I would like them to be, but they'll let you feed them some carrots occasionally. So that's pretty fun. Keeps me on my toes for sure. Thanks for letting me be here today.
Hey, you're very, very welcome. Before we get into the interview questions, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, how you came to be, anything else that may be interesting to the listeners?
Yes, absolutely. Professional settings now, like you mentioned before, for over 15 years in a variety of roles. Probably at least the last 10 years, I have been sort of that trusted advisor. Many of our senior executives that I've worked directly with or for. And so I really enjoy not only frontline leadership, but also helping our kind of shape that future direction of organizations as well. Getting to lead from kind of the mid-level range and getting to help influence the strategic direction of organizations.
Awesome. Awesome. One thing that I remember as we were working together back in our previous organization was that influence. And we talk a lot about at the frontline leadership level how to build that influence. Can you share with the group just a little bit about how you see influence and just the importance of what that is in leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think influence, that can be something that almost has a negative connotation, but it's also something that, you really have to work hard to almost build relationships at the core level before you can really have influence with somebody or within an organization. Relationship building is really cornerstone to leadership and to having that influence with people and being able to, help motivate and inspire others.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the word relationship. And it's one of those things that takes time as we nurture in the care and feeding of our relationships, our professional and our personal relationships. And where influence comes in, as you mentioned, it can be viewed negatively. I think when we talk about it in a negative way, it can almost be like persuasion, if you want to equate it maybe to that word. In leadership, though, it's really that you can't ask others to follow you if they don't trust you, if you don't have that relationship there, if you're not checking in on them. So there's a lot of things that go in, I think, where you were heading to say is it's important that we as frontline leaders recognize that those relationships help us get to know the team, help us get to know others. And then in the end, the mission of this podcast is to help others get to where they're going, and influence and creating those or fostering those relationships is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's get into these questions here. Question one, and this really pertains to influence. So we kick that off. Who is a female leader in your life that influenced you to become the person that you are today?
Okay. Thanks, John. And I really love that question. When I was kind of sitting down and, collecting my thoughts as it relates to this question specifically, it really had me dig deeper. What is leadership? What is a leader? To be able to answer that question. And, if you were to do a word cloud, some of the things that really kept coming up to the front of my mind were, like guiding, impacting outcomes, inspiring confidence in others, developing, building, investing, really toward that greater vision and that greater purpose. And so when I was studying those words and just kind of thinking about, who fit that bill in my life, it really was my mom ultimately. I mean, for so long, she was that pillar that represented so many of those leadership qualities to me. And even though it was more on a micro level, she wasn't leading huge organizations by any means. But I'll kind of get into a little bit of my personal background that I don't share very often. But my mom had me when she was 17 years old. She then went on to get her master's degree, or her bachelor's degree, her master's degree, and ultimately became a licensed drug and alcohol counselor and helped lead others to a life of free of addiction. And so
Awesome.
that was her mission, that was her purpose. And so she lived and breathed every day by that and by those core values. And so I really just reflect on someone who was an influential leader to me, and it was definitely my mom in that respect. So a lot of those qualities I really hold true to this day.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, that story, Holly. I know, knowing you, how big of an influence your mom was,
Yeah.
and I know that you carry forward a lot of those qualities just in the projects that we've worked in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing you again joining your community in helping lead that. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but definitely it's something that I can see you carrying forward in your daily life. So
Great. Thanks, John.
yeah. So the next one, and this centers around challenges. And as a female leader, as a leader, period, there are challenges that we face on a day to day basis. What are some of the challenges that female leaders face today in your world?
Yeah, this is a great question too. I really feel like there's a lot of unique challenges that are going on right now. Especially I would say from my not whole, from a female leader perspective, it's I really want to pour in, everything that I have to my job. I also have, the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old, so I want to pour in, my heart and soul into them as well. And then of course I have my marriage and my other endeavors. And so really prioritizing my time to where it is most important and most impactful. I don't watch a ton of television. I will scroll on Facebook occasionally. That's probably my biggest time sucker there. But I really have to stay present, and I have to really work to prioritize my time so that I'm able to use it to the most benefit for the things that I really do find that I'm passionate about, and that, really I need to focus on ultimately. So definitely limiting the distractions, making sure that I'm just staying present for where I need to be in that moment. And I'm really a firm believer in a kind of intense focus, for lack of a better term. Maybe it's something I just made up, but if I have a goal that I'm working toward or something really big, everything else may fall by the wayside for a little while I really just dig in and dig deep and crush that goal. I feel like doing that allows me to, really get what I want and get it done quickly. And then I can kind of let off the gas a little bit. That can go on autopilot while I'm working really hard, on something else. And so I do that instead of just kind of, doing things mediocre across every spectrum. So things will kind of get put on the back burner while I deep dive into something else. So I make sure that I really master whatever it is at that time that I'm needing to learn or, to figure out. And so that way I really, I feel like that has allowed me to expand and do a lot of variety of things, which kind of help fuel my soul so that I'm more balanced as far as the home perspective, the work perspective, and then doing things that give me personal fulfillment as well.
That is awesome. That is great. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you because you hit a couple things that I want to unpack just a little bit further. One, and the word that comes to my mind is being intentional
Mm-hmm.
about the things that you focus on or you really prioritize your time on. Can you give the listeners a couple tricks or tips on how that intentionality or how you remain intentional when you do get a goal and you start getting laser focused?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So some of my personal tips and tricks, I actually had an executive one time. She was amazing. She was really a great leader. And one of the things that she actually taught me was she has note cards, like the actual physical note cards. And if she needed it to be in front of her and she wanted to focus on it, she would write it down on that note card. And she would carry around this stack of note cards. It was awesome. And I asked her about it one time, and she said that was a way that she could keep things at the forefront of her mind. And every once in a while, every week or whatever cadence, she would actually flip through those note cards. And so it was a kind of a memory trigger and something to keep those things at the forefront of her mind. I still do that to this day. If it's important to me, it gets written down physically on either my calendar, my physical calendar, like it's right over here, um, or I write it down on a note card. And so for me, definitely that's something that it's digital. I just don't, I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't touch it. So it doesn't stay at the forefront of my mind as much as something that I physically write down does. So that's one way. I also set really big goals for myself. I would say, one of the things that I feel like has helped me be so successful is I try my best not to be self-limiting. I feel like us as women sometimes, we are our biggest critic. And so it's really easy for us to talk ourselves out of things or to say, oh, well, I can't do that. I've got to do this other thing, or I've got to be there with the kids, or whatever the case may be. And so really, I do feel like having that positive self talk to yourself, I'm not out there talking to myself like I'm crazy, but whenever you have the choice to say, I can do this, I want to do this, and then just go after it. I mean, having the ability to see what you want and then actually go after it and get it, that's a feeling like none other. And once you do it once, it's like a muscle. It's easier to exercise that again and again. And so I would highly encourage you. You can start small, you can start big, but just start. That's really something that you have to do. You have to just start.
Yeah. Uh, wow. Because we were just talking about that prior to as we were mic checking and getting sound
Yeah.
ready. Holly and I, and you all have heard me tell the story that I had to get the perfect camera and I had to get the perfect light. And then I had to, design the perfect room behind me. And I was coming up with all these excuses about, well, it needed to be perfect, right? That word
Mm-hmm.
perfect in order for me to start. But what I heard you say, and what I think is important for people to take away from what you just mentioned, is the importance is just to begin.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the word messy, and we're doing this messy. We're actually piloting a first software for the very first time that I told Holly, so probably made her a little bit nervous. But these are the types of things. It's just getting in, jumping in with 2 feet, starting something, and we learn along the way. And failure is an option. You fail fast, and then you pick yourself up and you learn from your mistakes, those lessons learned, and you continue on down the road. And from a frontline leader standpoint, I think that's one thing to model, but it's another thing really to get others to believe in. And,
Hmm.
we have this fear of failure as human beings, as adults, and nobody wants to fail you. I don't want to fail anybody myself. And in the end, though, that failure comes with the experiential learning that we need to have as adults. So that way, whenever, we are mentoring or coaching or giving back to our communities and organizations, we can help others not make those same mistakes.
Absolutely. I think too, John, something that you said there, that it's okay for you to fail. It's okay for me to fail. It is okay. I will say one thing that I've tried to do throughout my entire life is, you can also learn from other people's failures. They don't just have to be your own. So if I see somebody who's doing something that I want to emulate, I'm like, awesome. Yes, I will do that. But I do the same thing with people who I feel like I don't want to emulate or who have failed, and learning from those mistakes as well and applying them to your life. I think that that helps propel you forward faster as well.
Well said. Well said. 100%. Yeah. All right. This is great. As again, we ask these questions, we'll dig a little bit deeper on some of the words and the key things, key points that we'll pick up on. But the next question talks about inspiration, and I can think of a handful of times where there have been people in my life that have really inspired me. So the question for you is, can you share an inspiring story of a female leader who made a big difference in your life?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say, early on in my career, I was actually started as an intern, and it was, shortly after that, intern, at least back in my day, had kind of a negative connotation. You were filing papers, you were doing the meaningless tasks in the office that nobody else wanted to do. Nowadays my interns get to do robotic process automation and like fun things. But back in the day, we were paper pushers and we were doing filing. So after I had gotten, shuffled around between a few filing jobs, I finally had a mentor in my internship who really invested in me, like really did. Like she showed me the ropes. She showed me what it meant to be, really passionate about your work, but also really passionate about, things that were going on in your home life and how it was okay to have everything. And so it was probably about 2014. I had been with this mentor for several years at that point, but, thought the world of her. She had two small young children, probably both under the age of 6, maybe 3 and 6, somewhere around in those ages. And she was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. She was extremely young. She was, married, had a great marriage, had these two beautiful, young, blonde headed girls, just so full of life. And there she was, seemingly healthy, staring this, cancer diagnosis in the face. And so that really touched me on, not just a personal level, but a professional level. And she just continued to show up. She showed up for her daughter. She showed up for her husband. She showed up for herself. She fought. She did it with such grace. I actually attended one of her chemo treatments, I think, where they were giving her, like, literally, I want to say they called it the red devil chemo. I mean, it was just horrible. The side effects were horrible. And I was there with her when they were giving her that chemo. I was in my early 20s. I didn't have kids yet myself. And just that just stuck with me. And she was such an influential person at work, and she worked incredibly hard. And, she was able to really achieve this great level of success in a way that, of course, on a work front, everyone there was rooting for her. Everyone was rooting for her in her personal life, and she was a fighter. And so now to see her today, her kids are in high school, they're driving. She just fought and she won that battle. And I know not everyone does, but she really was a strength and someone that I absolutely have and forever will look up to because she made just such a deep impact on my life. And I know in the lives of many others as well. And she continues to do so. And I just see her as a person who, has it all. She has the career, she has the husband, she has the family, and she has, just a great, I think relationship with God as well on the spiritual level. And so she's just such a well-rounded person. And I just really look up to her because of all of that and knowing those struggles that she went through and endured and is still able, to have it all. That's just somebody that I will forever look up to and really has made a lasting impression on my life and kind of helped shape who I am as well.
That is such a powerful story. And, as again, I think about influential people in our lives as leaders, it really takes those special ones that
Mm-hmm.
uh, get us into leadership. And leadership is not fun every day.
Yeah,
There's things like you
definitely
mentioned,
not.
challenges that life throws our way, health wise, professionally, personally. And in the end, we still show up for our team, we still show up for others. And a lot of times it's at the sacrifice of putting, aside our own, where we're at, our mindset and the things that are going on in our lives to be able to lead forward. And that's such a big important aspect of what makes, or I think differentiates those leaders, the good leaders, from the great ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Okay. So before the conversation started, when we were prepping, we talked a little bit about the organizational culture piece, and I want to dig into that because I know in our role when we were, servicing as executive advisors, we really focused on organizational culture. So, can you speak a little bit about that from a leadership perspective and just how important organizational culture is to establish that?
Absolutely. I know it feels like whenever we were working together, you would always say, and maybe this is a Simon Sinek thing, I don't exactly remember, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's still something that rings true to me, even today, because I have been, I think, very fortunate throughout my career where I've been in organizations where they really had the culture of safety. That was a value, a core value of theirs, and not just physical safety, but really that psychological safety. And so I always felt empowered to, speak my mind, to speak what I had to say, and to contribute in a meaningful way. And I personally think a lot of that has to do with the culture of the organizations and the way they made you feel inclusive, or they were inclusive, and they made you feel like you were part of the team no matter where exactly in the organizational hierarchy you set. And so for me, I know as I've progressed throughout my career, that value of psychological safety and inclusion, that's something I model and I live by. I try to every single day because, I know we've all done something where, maybe we've, been played a game, a board game, or played a sport or something. And, no one ever likes that feeling of being picked last. And so I just try to always really make sure that my team feels included, that they feel like they have a voice and that they can, not only interact with me, but interact with their teammates as well. I think that that really helps kind of um, create that organizational trust, helps build those relationships that we talked about earlier, and just builds a stronger team uh, in its entirety.
Yeah, and inclusion is one of those things I know sometimes gets thrown around as a buzzword, and you see
Mm-hmm.
it, like you said, in strategic documents, or maybe it's on a poster on a wall, right?
Yeah.
Here's our core values, and inclusion is one of those words that are up there on that wall. But I really appreciate how you mentioned examples of how you include your team, day in and day out. And it's easier sometimes to talk about exclusion and what that looks like, because like you mentioned, we've all been there, or we don't want to be there, where you're picked last for a team and you feel like there's something, well, what's wrong with me? It kind of goes back to your imposter syndrome. Is there something wrong with
Mm.
me? And so it's important as frontline leaders that we make sure to, at every opportunity that we get, is to make sure that others do have that feeling of inclusion. And it's not just a word; it lives within the organization, and it has behaviors associated with it, and that we model and that they model, and it's a living thing. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
a strategic document that gets created and then set on the shelf and reviewed maybe once or twice a year.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really only have one other question, and then we can really talk about anything that you feel you want to talk about. But the last one that I have for you is: what is the single most piece of advice that you can give other female leaders?
For me, I would say whether you tell yourself you can or you tell yourself you can't, you're right. And so that mindset, your mindset, is going to be crucial whether you want to be a leader, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to be, a philanthropist, whatever you want to do with your life, it starts with your mindset. And so I mentioned a little bit earlier, having that positive self talk, being around people who are lifting you up, who are lifting others up. If you're around a group and all they do is gossip and talk bad about others, then, that's probably not the place that you want to be when you're trying to shift your mindset into that of someone who is a leader, who is out there in front and trying to, ultimately persuade people to work and to follow the vision that you set forth for the organization. And so you really have to hold yourself in high regard, and you have to operate in a way that's not only becoming to you, but that's becoming to others as well. And so definitely you've got to have that mindset of someone that, people want to be around. And I think that helps draw others into you as well.
That is awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think you wrapped it up very eloquently. And, one other thing I want to touch on: I heard from a little birdie that you are running for a school board position. And I will tell you, I'll just put in my plug. What you just said in the conversation that we've been having today, any community would be lucky to have you lead, the direction and be on a board that are making decisions for the future, generations to come of their community. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And we can kind of move it from there.
Yes, Don, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I do. I always have felt drawn to service, whether that's, personally or professionally. We've chatted about that a little bit. And so I really feel, compelled to help and to help guide and lead that next, generation as we move forward, with our school system and with our learning. The impact that and the ripple effect, I feel like that, as someone that is in a position like that can have, and really just to be able to serve the community in a way that impacts so many lives. I'm both, humbled and extremely honored to even be able to be considered for the position on a board like that. So really looking forward to the election, and we'll see how it turns out. So thank you, John.
Well, you're welcome. And I would encourage everybody to get out there and vote for Holly, because she's going to make a difference. And if you
Thank
don't
you.
believe that with what you've just heard, trust me. Trust me. Holly is a person. When she says she's going to do something, there's actions behind that. So, Holly, I'm super excited for you. I'm super excited that you are my second interview, and this just I can't tell the listeners how important these type of relationships are. I mean, when Holly and I first met each other, what, back in, was that, it was prior to COVID. So
Like, was
two,
it 18?
it
Maybe
was
2018?
18-ish. That's what I was going to say. It was around 2018, and she came over, and we were just starting to build an organization. Our senior leader at that time, he had a vision, and we were part of that vision, and we began to map out what the organization is going to look like. And a lot of those remnants even survived through COVID. So if that's not a testament to what a forward thinker that Holly is, some of the analytical pieces of information, standing up dashboards, and just your foresight to see where the organization needed to be, I'll tell you what, it is a testament of the legacy that you have left behind in that organization. And that's what it's all about. That's what this leadership piece is: coming into an organization, a club, a group, whatever, your team, and leaving it better than what you got it. And you are an example of a leader that continues to do that and will continue to do that moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. So glad we got to chat.
Well, I am thankful. And again, if you're not following Holly on her social media, she's in real estate. She does a lot of things, as she's mentioned on here. So go out, make sure that you're following her on her platforms. Make sure you're getting out in the local community that she lives in and voting. But Holly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being a guest on the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. And everybody, again, please subscribe, please follow. If you have something and you do share this video, make sure to tag me, and I will be sure to respond back or tag or post it on my page. But other than that, Holly, if you wouldn't mind closing us out with just a "Go Be Great" today, we'll end after that.
Okay, awesome. Go be great today, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.